I've always believed life tests you in the moments you least expect. For me, the test came on a quiet, golden Saturday evening, the type where the sun melts against the windows and everything feels too calm to be dangerous. I had just finished a long morning shift at the cafe, my feet aching, my hands still smelling faintly of burnt coffee beans. Rent was due in 6 days, tuition fees were hanging over my head like a cloud ready to burst, and my bank balance was barely holding on to 2 digits. Still, I dragged myself to my grandfather's mansion, telling myself the visit was long overdue. My grandpa was wealthy, extremely wealthy, but we weren't close. Not because he didn't love me but because life, distance and a broken family had built a wall between us. I never expected anything from him. Just being allowed inside his home with its marble floors and chandeliers worth more than my entire existence felt like a gift I didn't deserve. Before I continue, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to my channel for more unbelievable life stories like this. Trust me, the truth behind what I'm about to share changed everything I ever thought I knew. I found him sitting in his glass-walled reading room, a place that always smelled like old books, polished wood and a hint of peppermint tea. He looked up, smiled gently and invited me to sit. We talked about simple things, my studies, my job, the weather. He seemed softer than I remembered. For years I'd believed he barely thought about me. So when he leaned back, crossed his legs and asked the question that would split my entire world open, I didn't see it coming. "Lena," he said, his voice calm and almost casual, "are you making use of the $850,000 education fund I set aside for you?" I blinked, once, twice. The air froze in my lungs. "The what?" I whispered. "The education fund," he repeated, lowering his glasses. $850,000. The one I arranged for you when you were 10. My heart began pounding, loud, sharp, painful. It felt like my entire body rejected the words. I shook my head slowly, trying to understand if I'd misheard him, misread his lips, or simply slipped into some kind of tired hallucination. "Grandpa, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard of any fund." He frowned, the kind of frown he only made when he believed someone was lying to him. He stood abruptly, walked to his antique filing cabinet and pulled out a thick envelope. Inside were papers neatly arranged and clipped together. Legal documents, bank statements, authorization signatures. Signatures I recognized. My father's signature. My hands trembled as he placed the documents in front of me. "There," he said, tapping the top page gently. "I created this fund for your education. Your father signed as the trustee. He assured me every year that you were using the funds responsibly for your schooling." My stomach twisted so violently I almost thought I would throw up. My father lied? I flipped through the pages, my eyes catching every line, every date, every transfer. It was all real. The fund existed. It had been active for more than a decade. Contribution records. Investment growth. Annual statements. But one thing hit me harder than everything else. According to the papers, the fund had been completely drained. Drained, to the last cent. "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I work 2 jobs. I've taken loans. I nearly dropped out last semester because I couldn't afford my textbooks. If something like this existed, why didn't I know?" Grandpa sighed, his shoulders sinking as if a great weight had been placed on them. "Lena, I trusted your father with this. He told me you wanted privacy about the fund, that you preferred it managed quietly. Are you telling me this is the first time you're hearing about it?" "Yes," I breathed. "For the first time." He leaned back, eyes darkening, not with anger but with disappointment. And disappointment from a man like him was worse than any explosion of rage. I kept reading the documents, forcing myself to confront every number. The dates of withdrawals. The frequency. The amounts. All large. All consistent. All authorized. My world slowly unraveled. I thought about the nights I cried because I didn't have money for assignments. The meals I skipped. The humiliation of begging professors for extensions. The worry that kept me awake every night. And all that time someone in my family, had access to nearly $1 million that was supposed to be mine. I felt anger, sharp volcanic anger, bubbling under my ribs. But behind the anger was something else. Fear. Dad lied about this. What else had he lied about? "Grandpa," I whispered, "who else knew about this besides my father?" He paused before answering, And that pause held more secrets than any spoken sentence. Your mother signed the initial paperwork, he said softly. But after that it was all in your father's hands. My throat tightened. My mother had passed away years ago, so there was no way to ask her anything now. The only person left who could explain any of this was my father. The man who had told me all my life that money was tight. That we couldn't afford things. That I should be grateful just to survive. The man who watched me suffer financially for years and said nothing. The question hit me like a punch. Where did the money go? And even worse, why did he lie to me? My grandfather placed his hand gently on mine. Lena, he said, whatever's happening here, we're going to uncover it. I promise you that. But as I stared at the drained accounts and forged signatures, I felt something shift inside me. A cold realization. Someone had stolen not just money, they had stolen my future. And I intended to find out who, no matter what it cost. When I left my grandfather's mansion, the sky had already darkened, heavy clouds swallowing the last bits of daylight. I drove home with trembling hands and a wildfire burning in my chest. The folder he'd given me sat on the passenger seat, mocking me with every bump of the road. $850,000. Years of withdrawals. My father's signature stamped on every page like a confession. By the time I reached home, the anger inside me had hardened into something sharp, like glass lodged deep in my throat. I pushed open the front door and found my father sitting on the couch, watching TV with that tired, casual posture he always had after work. He didn't even turn his head when I entered. I didn't bother with greetings. Dad, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. We need to talk. He glanced over, mildly annoyed. About what? I held up the folder. This. His eyes flicked to it and his expression shifted, too quickly. From irritation, to surprise, then to something like fear. Real fear. What's that? He asked, though his voice betrayed him. You know exactly what this is. I stepped forward, dropping the folder onto the coffee table. Grandpa gave me these documents today. He asked if I was using the $850,000 he set aside for my education. My father froze. Lena, he whispered, rubbing his face with both hands. It's not what you think. Oh, and what do I think? I snapped. That I've been working myself to death while you hid almost $1 million from me? Or that you forged signatures and drained an entire fund meant for my future? His jaw tightened. I did not touch that money. Then where did it go? I shouted, my voice cracking. The account is empty. $850,000. Gone. Don't stand there and tell me you know nothing. He stood abruptly, pacing like a trapped animal. You don't understand, Lena. I didn't take anything. Then who did? I demanded. He didn't answer. Something in me shifted at that moment, rage turning to dread. My father wasn't acting guilty. He was acting scared. Terrified. Dad, I whispered. Please. Tell me the truth. His shoulders slumped. He sank back onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. For a moment he looked smaller, like a man crushed under years of secrets. Finally he spoke. There was someone else with access to the fund. My blood went cold. Who? I asked. He hesitated. When he lifted his head, his eyes were red. Your sister. I stared at him, stunned. Pie what? He swallowed painfully. Your sister. Mira. A sharp laugh escaped me, half disbelief, half desperation. Dad, I'm your only child. No, he said quietly. No, you're not. I felt the room shift, like gravity bending around me. He continued, voice trembling. Before you were born, your mother had another baby. A girl. Mira. She died at birth. We buried her before you were old enough to understand. My heart thudded violently against my ribs. I don't believe you, I whispered. If she died, how is her name on the documents? He closed his eyes, tears forming. Because she didn't die. Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Cars passing faintly outside. The sound of my own breathing, shallow and uneven. What do you mean, she didn't die? I managed to ask. He ran a hand through his hair. Your mother, she lied to me. She told me Mira was stillborn because she didn't want your grandfather to know. There was a scandal in the family back then. something she was trying to protect Mira from. I don't know the full story. Your mother took that secret with her when she died. But the documents, I pointed at the folder. Her name is listed as the beneficiary to MY Education Fund. How? Because she came back, he whispered. Years ago. Quietly. She wanted nothing to do with us. Except the money. She said it was hers, her right. She threatened to expose things your mother hid. Things that would destroy this family. So you gave her access to my fund? I shouted. He shook his head violently. I didn't give her anything. She had documents, legal ones, signed by your mother before she died. I swear I didn't know what to do. She told me if I said a word to you, she would disappear forever. And she would take the truth with her. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. So you just let her take everything? He didn't respond. Anger flared inside me again, but this time it had a different edge. It wasn't anger at him. It was anger at the shadow of a girl I never knew existed, a girl with my blood, who had stolen my future and vanished into the world like a ghost. I whispered her name aloud, testing its weight. Mira. Dad nodded slowly, his voice breaking. She's alive, Lena. And she's dangerous. I took the folder back into my hands, flipping through the pages again. Now that I knew the truth, I saw details I'd missed. The pattern of withdrawals, the fake addresses, the identical signatures. This wasn't just a thief. This was someone who had been planning for years. Where is she now? I asked quietly. He shook his head. I don't know. She only contacted me through burner phones and emails. She disappeared after the last withdrawal. But I didn't believe him, not fully. A parent always knows more than they admit. I stood up, clutching the folder to my chest. That I'm going to find her. He looked up at me, panic flashing in his eyes. Lena, no. You don't know who you're dealing with. Yes, I said firmly, my voice low and steady. I do. I'm dealing with my sister. The sister you let walk away with everything. He opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't let him. From now on, I find my own answers. And with that I walked out the door, my father calling my name behind me, desperation echoing in his voice. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Because now I knew the truth. And I wasn't afraid. I was furious. And I was ready to hunt the ghost who stole my life. Leaving the house that night felt like stepping out of one world and into another. The air was cold, sharp, and strangely heavy, as if it already knew the storm I was about to walk into. I clutched the folder against my chest, my mind spinning with one name. Mira. Sister I never knew. A sister who wasn't supposed to exist. A sister who stole everything meant for me. Most people would have stopped there, shocked, broken, confused. But something awakened inside me the moment I learned she was alive. A fire. A hunger. A need to take back what was mine. So I began digging. Not later. Not the next day. Immediately. I spent hours online, combing through every small detail about my family's past. Public records. Archived newspapers. Obituaries. Marriage licenses. Hospital registries. There were fragments, hints, like shadows moving behind curtains, but nothing solid. Until I went to the county records office the next morning. The woman behind the counter gave me a tired look when I asked for files under my last name from 22 years ago. But when I explained I needed birth documents for legal reasons, she handed me a stack of papers thick enough to make my heart stutter. Halfway through the pile I found it. A birth certificate. Dated 2 years before I was born. Name, Mira Hawthorne. Mother, Lena Hawthorne, my mother. Father, Jonathan Hawthorne, my father. I stared at the paper for a long time, my fingers trembling. So she was real. A real child. A real sister. But the next document nearly made me drop the entire folder. Hospital report, emergency department status. Infant transferred to protective services. Transferred? Not buried? Not dead? My heartbeat thundered in my ears. Flipping through the file, I found an adoption referral form. It didn't list names, just codes and blurred out agencies. But one sentence stood out at the top of the page, highlighted in red. Child removed from biological household due to traumatic incident involving the mother. I felt my breath catch. What traumatic incident? Why had no one told me? Why had my father believed she died? My mother, what had she done? Or what had been done to her? I leaned back in the stiff wooden chair, my hands cold. My mother had always been gentle, soft-spoken, and endlessly loving. Imagining her involved in something that tore a child away from her felt impossible. But the evidence was right there in front of me. And then, something even stranger. At the bottom of the form, a handwritten note. Child must not be returned to original household under any circumstances. Something had happened that night. Something so dark, so dangerous, it destroyed an entire branch of my family's history. I packed the documents tightly into my bag, thanked the clerk, and walked toward my car with my mind racing. I wasn't prepared for what happened next. My phone vibrated. A single text message lit up my screen. Unknown number. Stop searching. The money is mine. My skin prickled. A chill spread through my body. My fingers went numb around my phone. I looked around. Cars passed. People walked by. Everything looked normal. But it wasn't. Someone knew what I was doing. Someone was watching me. And there was only one person who had a reason to send that message. Mira. I jumped into my car and locked the doors, my breath shaky. My heart thumped violently against my ribs, each beat echoing louder and louder. Another message followed. Unknown. Walk away, Lena. You don't know what you're digging into. My stomach twisted. Not just because of the warning, but because she knew my name. I swallowed hard and typed back with trembling fingers. Me, who are you? The reply came instantly. Almost like she'd been waiting. Unknown. Don't be stupid. You already know. I felt a surge of anger stronger than fear. Me, Mira? No response. Not for several long seconds. The unknown. Last warning. Stop now, unless you want to end up like our mother. My breath stopped. My mother? What did she mean, end up like our mother? What had happened that night 22 years ago? What was so terrible Mira believed it would repeat itself with me? My legs felt weak. But the fear didn't paralyze me, it fueled me. If Mira was willing to threaten me, if she was willing to warn me off, it meant I was close. Closer than she wanted me to be. And that meant one thing. I had to keep going. I retraced every detail in the documents. The dates. The codes. The agencies. The hospitals. A trail began to emerge. Not clear enough to fully understand but visible enough to follow. There were adoption agencies out of state. Old addresses connected to caseworkers. Transfer logs from hospitals miles away. Broken patterns that hinted at someone constantly moving. Someone trying to stay hidden. Someone who felt threatened. Someone who had a lot to lose. And as I studied every page, every clue, every detail, something inside me clicked. Mira didn't just disappear. She was running. Running from something, or someone. And she'd become very good at staying invisible. But not good enough. Not anymore. Because I was done being the girl who knew nothing. Done being in the dark. Done letting my life be controlled by people who wrote me out of my own story. I stared at the last message she sent, my heart steady now. She wanted me to stop? Too late. I whispered into the still air of my car. I'm coming for you, Mira. And for the first time I felt it. Fear didn't control me anymore. I controlled it. Finding Mira wasn't easy. She was a ghost. Slipping through gaps in records, hiding behind fake names, changing addresses before anyone could track her. But ghosts leave footprints even if faint. And I followed every single one. For weeks, I traced email trails that hid behind VPNs, bounced through servers and looped through abandoned domains. I learned more about digital forensics than I ever thought I'd need. If obsession had a heartbeat, it matched mine. But the real breakthrough came from the financial footprints. Mira wasn't careful with the money she stole. She moved it through hidden accounts, shell corporations, fake charities, and offshore codes. But she got sloppy. One payment, just one, was made using a traceable merchant account under her fake identity. Vivian Cole. A name that didn't exist 5 years ago, but suddenly owned a penthouse, luxury car, and private business. I ran the name through every database I could access. And there she was. My sister. Alive. Rich. And living like a queen on the ashes of my future. The building she lived in was the kind you see in magazines. Sleek steel, tinted glass, private elevators, the kind of place that whispered wealth. I watched it for days, learning her patterns. Morning yoga. Afternoon shopping. Evening parties. Men and women coming and going in expensive suits, laughing too loudly. It didn't take long to confirm something else. Mira wasn't just rich. She was connected. And dangerous people moved around her. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I wanted answers. I wanted the truth. I wanted her. So one evening when she returned alone, I slipped in behind her through the lobby, using a delivery man's distraction to bypass security. I followed her into the elevator, my heart pounding. She pressed the button for the top floor. I pressed the same. She didn't look at me, not yet. She was scrolling her phone, perfectly polished, dressed in all black silk, her hair sleek and straight. But when the elevator doors closed, she lifted her eyes and stared at my reflection in the mirrored wall. And she smiled. Not a surprised smile. A knowing one. So, she said calmly, you finally found me. My breath caught. You knew. I whispered. I knew from the day you started digging. He shrugged. You're not as subtle as you think. The elevator dinged open. Her penthouse was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, marble floors, gold accents and designer furniture. It smelled of jasmine and expensive candles. Everything was curated. Perfect. Just like her. She tossed her bag aside and turned to me, arms crossed. Well, she said, I assume you're here to accuse me. So go on. Accuse. The anger I had been carrying for months boiled to the surface. You stole my education fund, I snapped. You drained every dollar Grandpa saved for me. She raised a brow, amused. So he finally told you. Why? I demanded. Why would you take something meant for me? She walked toward the window, looked out at the glittering skyline, then said softly. Because you got the life I never had. I simply took what was owed to me. My jaw tightened. What life? We weren't rich. I grew up struggling. She laughed. A bitter, mocking sound. Struggling with parents, Lena. Struggling with people who loved you. Struggling with a home. I grew up in agencies, foster homes, strangers' houses. Always being moved, always being unwanted. All because of a secret that wasn't my fault. You had everything I never got. I stepped closer. That doesn't justify stealing from me. She turned sharply, her eyes blazing. It justifies everything. Then she walked to a small glass desk, opened her laptop and clicked through folders. Bank files, transaction logs, offshore accounts. My stomach dropped. You forged Dad's signature, I said quietly. Yes. You used my legal info to access the fund. Yes. And you knew I was struggling. Yes. No remorse. Not even a flicker of guilt. She looked me dead in the eyes. You were collateral damage. That was the moment something inside me broke. Not fear. Not heartbreak. Resolve. I slid my phone from my pocket, pressing the record button without looking down. So you admit everything? I whispered. She smirked. I admit I took what should have been mine. I admit I forged signatures. I admit I used your identity. And I admit I don't regret a single thing. Her voice was cold, sharp, effortless. You think Grandpa loved you? She continued. He didn't even know I existed. Do you know how that feels? To be erased from your own bloodline? To live a life you never asked for because our mother made a mistake she couldn't fix. I stared at her, my chest tight, not with pity but with fury. You could have found me, I said. You could have talked to me. And what? She snapped. Beg for scraps? Lena. I built my life without you. And now you want to tear it down? You're too late. She turned away. But I wasn't finished. I walked to her desk while she poured herself a drink, my fingers moving quickly across her laptop. I copied every file, banking logs, financial trails, client lists, onto a flash drive I'd hidden in my sleeve. When she turned around, she saw the flash drive in my hand. Her smile vanished. Her glass froze halfway to her lips. What did you do? She whispered. I took the truth, I said. The one you never wanted anyone to see. Her expression twisted, panic mixed with pure hatred. You don't know what you're doing, she hissed. Those files, you think they only involve me? You have no idea who you're crossing, Lena. And then she said it. You think I stole from you? You think I hurt you? Baby sister, that money was the least of my crimes. A shiver ran through me. What does that mean? I asked. She smiled darkly. It means you just stepped into a world where people disappear for knowing too much. I swallowed hard. But I didn't back down. You made one mistake, I said. And what's that? She whispered. You underestimated me. I walked toward the door. She didn't stop me. She just watched, breathing hard, her eyes filled with something terrifying. But as I stepped into the hallway, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't over. Mira wasn't just a thief. She wasn't just my sister. She was part of something much bigger. Much darker. Much more dangerous. And I had just declared war. I never thought walking back into my grandfather's mansion would feel like stepping into a battlefield. But that day I carried the truth like a weapon. Every lie, every secret, every stolen year had built up to this moment. His eyes lifted when I entered, and for the first time I didn't feel like the quiet, broke granddaughter he barely knew. I stood taller. Stronger. Sharper. Because now I wasn't just guessing, I had evidence. Proof. Answers. Lena, he said slowly, reading the tension in my shoulders. You found something, didn't you? I didn't speak at first. I simply placed the folder on the table between us. His hand hovered over it for a moment before he finally opened it. Inside were Mira's forged documents. The bank transfers. The voice recording. Screenshots of threats. The full map of the fraud network she helped operate. At first he didn't understand what he was looking at. But then he saw the signature. The fake version of his own handwriting used to authorize withdrawals. And finally he saw Mira's picture. His face crumpled into a mix of pain and disbelief. A granddaughter he thought was dead. A granddaughter who had stolen nearly $1 million. A granddaughter who wanted me gone. She's alive, he whispered. All these years, your father told us. My father lied, I said, my voice flat but steady. They lied to you. They lied to me. They lied to everyone. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling like he needed air. I didn't interrupt him. I just let the truth sit there, burning the room from the inside out. After a long silence he said very quietly, call the police. And I did. Within hours, everything unraveled. The arrest was brutal, fast, and loud. Police stormed Mira's luxury apartment, catching her mid-escape. She tried to hide her laptop, but the officers were faster. They found stacks of falsified documents, burner phones, and proof of her involvement in multiple identity theft operations. Her scream echoed down the hallway as the cuffs locked around her wrists. Lena, you think this changes anything? She shouted when she saw me standing near the entrance. You think you've won? I didn't flinch. I didn't come to win, I told her coldly. I came to end it. Her eyes filled with hate, pure, sharp, and wild. They dragged her past me, cursing, kicking, promising that I'd regret everything. But for the first time in years I felt free. My father didn't resist when officers came for him. He just sat on the living room floor, holding his head in his hands, saying over and over, I was trying to protect the family. I was trying to protect the family. But protecting a lie doesn't save a family, it destroys it. And he learned that too late. When the dust settled, my grandfather called me back to the mansion. This time his face wasn't confused or distant. It was full of raw, painful clarity. Lena, he said, I cannot undo the years that were stolen from you. I cannot undo the betrayal. But I can make sure you're never pushed aside again. He handed me a new set of documents. His rewritten will. Every property. Every investment. Every scholarship fund. Every account. Everything that was once meant to be shared was now placed under one name. Mine. Mira's entire side of the family is cut out, he said firmly. They made their choice when they chose deceit. Then he closed my hands around the papers. And from today forward you will never struggle again. The rest of your inheritance is released immediately. Use it to build a life that reflects who you are, not who they forced you to be. For a moment I couldn't breathe. I hadn't come for the money. I hadn't come for revenge. I came for the truth and found a new beginning instead. Thank you, I whispered. For believing me, even when it hurt. His eyes softened, and for the first time I saw something I had always wanted from him. Pride. When I left the mansion that day, the world looked different. Not because I was inheriting wealth. Not because the truth had been exposed. But because the weight I'd carried my whole life, confusion, struggle, abandonment, was finally gone. I walked down the driveway with the sun warm on my face, and for the first time in years my steps felt light. Behind me the lies burned. Ahead of me the future opened wide. Mira would face the consequences she had earned. My father would answer for his silence. And I would rise higher than any of them ever expected. This wasn't just the end of a family war. It was the beginning of my life. The life they tried to steal, the life I took back, the life I would build on truth, strength, and unshakable freedom. I didn't just reclaim my inheritance. I reclaimed myself. When I finally reached the end of the driveway, I paused and looked back one last time. The mansion stood tall behind me, no longer a symbol of secrets and betrayal, but of justice finally served. Mira would face the consequences she had earned. My father would answer for his silence. And I would rise higher than any of them ever expected. This wasn't just the end of a family war. It was the beginning of my life. The life they tried to steal, the life I took back, the life I would build on truth, strength, and unshakable freedom. I didn't just reclaim my inheritance. I reclaimed myself. And if you're still here with me at this moment, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next powerful story. Your support keeps these stories alive.